settle in, turn down the lights, and if you'd like to hear more true horror every week, tap the like button and leave a comment. Now, let's begin. I never thought something like this could actually happen to me. I've always been the type of person who assumed scary stories about home invasions were overblown, that you could lock your doors, keep your phone close, and nothing bad would ever happen. I was wrong. It happened 2 years ago when I was 15. My parents were out for the evening. They had some kind of work thing and didn't expect to be back until around 10. I had the house to myself. Usually I loved that. I could blast music, play games as loud as I wanted, make a huge mess and not worry about anyone yelling at me. I was in my room playing a new game on my console, headphones on, completely tuned out. Around 8:30, I went to grab a snack from the kitchen. I dumped a bag of chips into a bowl, and as I walked back to my room, I noticed something odd. The basement door was slightly open. I remember thinking, weird. I could have sworn I closed it this morning. My parents are usually really strict about locking it. I stepped closer and nudged it gently with my shoulder. It didn't swing open easily, but it wasn't locked either. I hesitated, then pushed it fully open. The basement was dark. My parents keep all the lights off unless they're down there, so I couldn't see much. I called out, "Hello?" half laughing at myself. "Mom? Dad?" I thought I locked this. Obviously, there was no answer. I laughed to myself, shrugged, and went back to my room. A few minutes later, however, I heard something. Faint, almost imperceptible at first. A creak. Not the floorboards, but something from the basement. Like someone had stepped on the bottom step. I took off my headphones and listened. My stomach sank. The sound repeated, slow and careful. I thought maybe it was a raccoon or some other animal. Our house is old, and the basement sometimes had critters. I told myself that as I went back to my game trying to act normal. Then I heard another sound. A shuffle. Definitely not an animal. This was deliberate, human. I didn't move at first. I stayed in my chair, hoping I was wrong. I grabbed my phone and dialed my parents' number. No answer. I called my neighbor. No answer. Panic started to settle in. I didn't know if the basement door had been open the whole time, or if someone had broken in while I was getting a snack. I didn't know if they were still there waiting or if they'd already moved to the main floor. I put the phone down, trying to think. I considered locking myself in my room, but then I remembered the front door. It was downstairs. I considered making a run for it, but if someone was hiding, they could see it and catch me if I tried to leave. But maybe it was just an animal. I grabbed a flashlight from my drawer, and I took a deep breath. I went outside my room and down the stairs carefully. It was dead silent in my house. The living room was clear, no one was there. That only confirmed my belief that it was an animal. So I went over to the basement door. The basement stairs creaked under my weight. My flashlight beam lit up the corner of the basement, illuminating shelves with paint cans, boxes of old clothes, and the water heater. Nothing moved, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I took a few steps down. Then something caught my eye. The corner behind the shelves looked different. The shadows looked weird. My pulse picked up. I stepped closer and noticed something else. A pile of clothes on the floor. Not mine, definitely not my parents'. Someone had taken off shoes and jackets down there. My brain was screaming at me, but I had to know. "Who's there?" I called loud. My voice sounded small in the big empty basement. Suddenly there was a movement in the shadows. A shuffle toward the far wall. I yanked my flashlight in that direction. That's when I realized there was an actual stranger in my home. They were crouched behind a stack of boxes trying to hide. I didn't scream. I felt paralyzed. My whole body got goosebumps. I couldn't even process it fast enough. I just froze in place, holding the flashlight like it could somehow keep them at bay. I remembered my parents' spare key under the mat and the house phone upstairs. I needed help. I backed up carefully, keeping my eyes on the figure. They didn't move, just stayed low and still, breathing softly. I ran upstairs and locked the basement door, then called 911. While I was on the phone, I could hear footsteps moving below. I don't know how long it lasted, maybe a minute, maybe longer. The dispatcher stayed on the line while I barricaded myself in my room. Police arrived within 10 minutes. They found a man hiding in the basement, crouched behind the same stack of boxes. He had a backpack with gloves and a small flashlight. According to the officers, he had been in the neighborhood for days, checking houses while people were out. I had been lucky. He hadn't tried to come upstairs, and he didn't resist when they took him out. I couldn't stop shaking that night. My parents came home and were just as horrified as I was. They kept asking why I hadn't called sooner. I told them I was scared to leave my room and that even now I still couldn't believe it had actually happened. The basement was cleaned out after that, and we installed new locks on every door and window. I never go down there alone now, and I always check twice if the door is locked when I'm home alone. Hi, I've been a longtime fan of your channel, and after thinking about it for a while, I decided to share something that happened to me and my boyfriend a few months back. I still don't really know what we saw that night, but it's haunted me ever since. We were driving home late one night from my parents' house. They live a couple of hours away from us, and we always end up staying later than planned. By the time we got on the road, it was already pitch black. It's a drive we've done plenty of times before, though. It's mostly highway, then this long stretch of back road that cuts through a pine forest before you reach our town. It was a weekday, so the road was completely empty. No cars ahead of us or behind us, no houses, no lights, just the two of us. I had my head leaned against the window, half asleep, just listening to the low music on the radio and the sound of the tires. It was that quiet, peaceful kind of drive you sometimes get at night. Then something ran across the road. It happened so fast, like a flash of gray in the headlights, and before I could even process it, we hit it. The car jumped hard, and there was this horrible thump. My boyfriend slammed on the brakes and swerved just enough to stay in control. We skidded to a stop right there in the middle of the road. I turned to him, my heart pounding, and said, "What was that?" It didn't look like a deer or a dog or anything like that. It looked gray and tall, almost like a person. We both got out of the car. The night air was freezing and the whole forest was so quiet it felt off somehow. One of the headlights was cracked, but the car itself wasn't too damaged. No blood on the bumper, no fur, just a dent and a scuff mark where we'd hit, whatever it was. I was staring at the tree line and whispered, "That wasn't an animal." My boyfriend was rubbing his hands over his face. I could tell he was rattled, but he didn't want to admit it. He kept saying maybe it was a deer, a coyote, or even someone's stray dog. He said we should at least check if it was hurt. I told him he was insane if he thought I'd let him go in there. "You didn't see it the way I did," I said. "That wasn't an animal." But he just shook his head, grabbed the flashlight from the glove box and said, "I'll be quick. Just stay in the car and lock the doors." I didn't want to, but I listened. I got back inside, shut the door, and locked it. I watched him cross the road with the flashlight beam bobbing between the trees. It got dimmer and dimmer the deeper he went until it was just a faint speck, and then it was gone. I sat gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. The broken headlight made the road even darker. I kept glancing at my phone but didn't want to look away from the woods. Then I heard something. It wasn't coming from where he'd gone. It was closer. It sounded like something was brushing against the car, followed by a slow scraping noise dragging across the side panel. I felt paralyzed. I whispered his name, thinking maybe it was him trying to mess with me. But there was no answer. I leaned forward, peering out through the windshield, and that's when I saw it. A head, just barely peeking above the hood of the car. For a split second, I thought it was him crouching to scare me. But the longer I stared, the more I realized it wasn't. The head was too narrow. The skin was pale and stretched tight. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the keys when trying to start the car. The undamaged headlight flicked on, and that's when I saw it clearly. It wasn't a human, not even close. The thing stood up taller now. Its skin was this washed-out gray. It tilted its head at me and started walking toward my window. I screamed. I slid across the seat, pressing myself against the passenger side, and slammed my palm on the horn. The sound blasted through the trees. I just wanted my boyfriend to come back. I didn't dare look up again. I was curled across the seats, sobbing, pressing my hands over my ears, hitting the horn again and again. And then it went quiet, until something tapped the glass. I still felt paralyzed. My whole body was stiff. But then I heard his voice. My boyfriend's voice. "Babe, it's me. What's wrong?" I shot upright and saw him standing there. Just him. No creature. No pale figure. Nothing. Just him holding the flashlight, looking completely confused and worried. I unlocked the door and screamed at him to get in and drive. He looked confused, but he got in, started the car, and floored it. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I told him everything. Every detail of what I'd seen. I expected him to laugh or tell me I was overreacting, but he didn't. He just stared at me for a long time and then nodded. He hadn't seen it, but he believed me. We still have to take that road sometimes to visit my parents, but every time we do, I feel sick. And I still can't get the image out of my head of that thing slowly rising up above the hood of the car. This happened back in my junior year of high school during a lockdown. I'll never forget it. It started as a regular day. We were in fourth period, English class, when the first announcement came over the intercom. "Attention staff and students. We are going into a precautionary lockdown. Please secure all doors and remain inside." At first, nobody seemed that worried. We'd done lockdown drills before, and half the time they ended up being nothing. Just a precaution if something was going on outside the building. My teacher quickly locked the door, turned off the lights, and told us to move to the corner. I'd been holding it for a while, so I asked if I could run to the bathroom before things got serious. She hesitated, but since the announcement didn't say code red, she let me slip out quickly. The bathroom was only a few doors down. I went, washed my hands, and was about to head back when another announcement crackled through the speaker above the bathroom door. This time the voice was urgent, panicked almost. "Code red lockdown. Repeat, code red lockdown. Teachers do not under any circumstances unlock your doors." My stomach dropped. A code red meant something real was happening inside the school. I left the bathroom quietly and hurried back to my classroom. When I reached the door, I knocked softly, then harder. I whispered, "It's me. Let me in." I even said my name, but still got no response. I could see the faint outline of my classmates through the narrow vertical window in the door. I knew they heard me, but code red rules were strict. No one opens the door, not even for a student. The teacher probably told them to stay silent. Then suddenly from the far end of the hallway behind me came the sound of laughter. Not kids laughing nervously. This was deeper. A man's laugh. Every hair on my body stood up. I didn't want to turn around, but I couldn't stop myself. The hallway lights were dimmed and the long stretch of lockers looked like an endless tunnel. I didn't see anyone. Then I heard the laughter again. I backed against the classroom door, whispering for them to let me in, but they didn't. The laughter echoed another time, followed by the sound of someone walking in heavy boots. Whoever it was, they weren't in a hurry. They were taking their time. Was this the reason why we went into lockdown, I thought. My instinct screamed at me to hide, so I darted toward the nearest intersecting hallway and crouched behind a row of lockers. My heart was hammering so loud I swore it gave me away. The footsteps grew louder. I peeked around the corner just enough to see a shadow stretch across the floor. It was long, tall, distorted by the dim lights. I couldn't make out a face, just the silhouette of someone standing in the hallway, head tilted like they were listening. I held my breath. Seconds felt like hours. Finally, the footsteps started moving again, but not away. They were heading toward the bathroom I'd just come out of. The laughter echoed one more time before the sound faded into silence. I stayed there, crammed against the lockers, until my legs went numb. I didn't move until I heard cop cars show up. A few minutes later, the all-clear signal was given over the speakers. By the time teachers opened their doors, the hallway was bright again and completely empty. No man, no sound, nothing out of place. The police didn't tell us anything, just that a suspicious man had been seen entering the building. When I got back into class, everyone stared at me like I was lucky to be alive. My teacher asked if I was okay, but I couldn't get the words out to respond. The school never explained what happened to the man. Rumors spread quickly. Someone saw a stranger outside. Someone swear it was just a police exercise with the school. But nobody mentioned a man in the hall laughing like a maniac. I never saw him leave the bathroom either. This actually happened to me a few years ago, and I still can't explain it. I'm an amateur hunter, mostly small game and deer when I can get time off from work. One weekend, I went up to some state forest a couple hours from my town. I got there early in the morning, parked my truck at the edge of a trail, and hiked into a fairly dense part of the woods. I knew the area a little from maps and past trips, but I was mostly exploring. Around mid-morning, I spotted a buck, perfect size, standing near a clearing. I set up, aimed, and took my shot. The deer ran off, and for a second I thought everything was normal and that I'd just missed. But then I heard another gunshot. It was almost identical to mine. I yelled out, but I didn't get a response. Thinking nothing more of it, I tracked the deer a little further, then saw movement again. Another deer. This one was smaller, and instinctively I raised my rifle and fired. Almost immediately the same shot echoed back, but this time it sounded closer, way closer. I stopped. "Who's there?" I shouted. Still no response. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone else was hunting illegally. Maybe it was a hunter from another state line. But why wouldn't they respond? And why were they firing every time I did? I figured I'd move along the trail to see if I could find anyone. That's when I realized something. The further I went, the denser the forest became. Landmarks I thought I remembered didn't make sense. Then I heard it again. A single gunshot. But this time it wasn't coming from the clearing. It was coming from somewhere deep in the woods. I lowered my rifle, trying to listen, but it got quiet again. I started moving, trying to follow a stream I thought led back to the trail. Every few steps I fired into the air, thinking the noise might scare whoever or whatever it was. Each shot echoed back almost instantly, and each time it sounded closer than before. The woods were silent otherwise. That echo made it feel like something was circling me. I kept moving, trying to retrace my steps. The sky was starting to darken. I realized I had no idea which direction the truck or main trail even was. After what felt like hours, I found a small clearing and decided to stop. I crouched down, trying to gather myself. Then, faintly at first, I heard it. The echo from a gunshot again. I ran. I didn't care where I was going, just ran through the thick underbrush, over roots and rocks, trying not to trip. After what felt like forever, I stumbled onto a faint path I recognized from my maps. I didn't stop until I reached the truck, jumped in, and locked the doors. I sat there, breathing hard, listening for a few minutes before eventually driving away. I didn't tell anyone in my hunting group. They probably would have laughed, said I was imagining things. Every time I think about it, I swear it wasn't just an echo. It got closer each time, and whoever it was clearly wasn't in their right mind. I've been driving trucks for over a decade, so I know most of the roads I run like the back of my hand. Some stretches feel friendly, like you can nap with one eye open. Others carry a weight. Mile marker 117 on Route 36 is one of those places for me. I don't know how many times I've passed it, but it never fails. Every time I hit that marker, something screws up. At first, it's small stuff. My CB goes to static, the GPS freezes, headlights blink like they're tired. Other times, it's worse. Once my trailer lights went out for a solid 2 minutes and I had to white-knuckle it until they came back. Another time, I hit something that felt like a deer, stopped to check, and there was nothing. No mark on the bumper, nothing on the road. People say it's coincidence, bad wiring, fatigue, weather, maybe. But I don't believe in coincidence out there. I've heard things in the static, too. I've seen shapes at the edge of the tree line. Not clear, but definitely there. And always, it's right around that damn mile marker. Last fall, it got worse. It was the dead of night, long haul, and I was tired as hell. The cold had that bone-deep kind of chill, even with the heater blasting. I was watching the odometer when I saw the sign. 117 coming up. I told myself I'd be fine. I always was. Just get through it. Tighten a hand on the wheel and keep going. Right as I passed the marker, the radio cut out. Mid-song, everything turned to a low hiss that filled the cab. I reached to kill it, but underneath the static there was something else. I couldn't make out words at first. It was warped, like it was underwater or being played on a busted speaker. Then little bits came through and vanished. I turned the radio down until it clicked off, and the silence felt worse. I checked the mirrors, nothing but black and my trailer lights fading into it. Suddenly the engine hiccuped. The whole rig shivered, lights dimmed, power dipping. I mouthed a few choice words, feathered the gas. Didn't help. Seconds later, everything died. I coasted to the shoulder right beside the white post that marks 117. The cab went pitch black. After a moment, the headlights came back. Weak, but enough to throw a cone of light out front. That's when I saw someone standing maybe 40 feet down the road. I thought it was a signpost at first, or some guy with a reflective vest. But it moved, a tiny shift, like a step. Too human to be a trick of the mind, too still to be normal. I locked the doors. The person didn't wave, didn't step toward me, just stood there, watching. I told myself it had to be a stranded driver or someone messing with me. I checked my phone, no service. Of course. For a long time, nothing else happened. I sat there with my engine dead, the cab filling with the smell of diesel and cold air, watching that silhouette. Then the CB burst back to life, blasting static so loud the whole cab rattled. Underneath it came that warped voice again. Clearer this time, strings of syllables I couldn't parse. One phrase cut through, though, sharp and clear. "Behind you." I turned around like an idiot. The sleeper was empty, just my jacket and a duffel. But the hair on the back of my neck stood up. When I looked forward again, the person was gone. I don't know how long I sat there, shocked. But eventually I got the engine back to life. I didn't waste a second. I hit it and left that spot like somebody was on my tail. I stopped at a truck stop nearly 50 miles down the road. Parked under fluorescent lights, surrounded by other rigs and the smell of coffee. It took me a good long while to calm down. I stared at myself in the windshield and tried to tell myself a rational story. Old wiring, tired brain, a trick of headlights. Maybe, but it didn't feel like that. I still run Route 36. Sometimes I don't have a choice. But when I see the numbers creep up and 117 gets close, that weight comes back. I shut the radio off now before I hit it. I don't stare at the trees. I don't slow down. I keep telling myself that this will be the last time I drive on this stretch of road, but somehow I always end up coming back. I was working the night shift, covering a stretch of highway that goes through mostly rural areas with just open road and forest on both sides. It was sometime past midnight. When you work at this hour, the world feels completely asleep except for you and the occasional trucker. I was parked in the median watching the few cars and trucks that passed when I suddenly noticed a silver sedan heading north. It wasn't speeding, but something about it caught my eye. Maybe it was just police instinct, or maybe I'd seen it before. Either way, I decided to run the plate. When the system came back, it flagged as a possible stolen vehicle out of another county. The description matched perfectly. Same make, same color, same plate. I waited until it passed, then pulled out and followed for a minute before flipping my lights on. The driver pulled over right away. I parked behind, gave dispatch my location, and approached the car from the driver's side. Inside was a man who looked to be in his 40s, clean-cut, wearing a button-up shirt. He was calm and quiet. "Evening," I said. "You know why I stopped you tonight?" He smiled politely. "No, officer." "Was I speeding?" "No," I said. "Your vehicle matches one that's been reported stolen. Mind showing me your license and registration?" He didn't hesitate at all, handed them right over. The license matched the name on the registration, both current. Everything looked legitimate. I even checked the VIN on the dash. It lined up with what I had. I went back to my cruiser to verify the details. The whole time I kept glancing at his car. He was just sitting there, hands on the steering wheel, looking straight ahead. I don't know why, but something about how still he was started to bother me. I called dispatch to double-check the record. "Hey, can you confirm that possible stolen on the silver sedan? Plate 4K9-dash?" The dispatcher paused. "Stand by." I waited, typing notes into my computer. The car sat quietly ahead of me. A minute passed before dispatch came back. 10-4, I'm showing that vehicle as recovered. "It shouldn't still be flagged recovered?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Hold on. That's odd. Says it was totaled in a fatal crash 3 years ago. Vehicle should have been destroyed." "What?" I muttered, thinking that clearly there was some kind of mistake. "Can you repeat that?" "Totaled in a fatal crash," she said again. "Driver deceased at the scene. It was processed and written off." I stared at the screen for a few seconds, thinking maybe I'd copied the plate wrong. But when I looked again, it was identical. Same number, same state. "Dispatch," I said. "You're sure this information's current?" "Positive. That vehicle doesn't exist anymore." I turned to look back at the road. The silver sedan was gone. Not pulled away or driving off, but gone. No taillights in the distance, no sound of an engine or tire marks. 1 second it was there, the next it wasn't. I stepped out of the cruiser, shining my flashlight around the empty highway. The beam caught nothing but asphalt and trees. I even checked further down the shoulder, thinking maybe he'd rolled forward or turned off into a hidden drive. But there was nowhere to go. Both sides of the road were thick forest for miles. I radioed back in. "Dispatch, be advised the vehicle is no longer at the stop." "What do you mean?" she asked. "It's gone. Vanished. Didn't see it leave." There was silence for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, "Are you sure about the location?" "We're not showing any movement from your GPS." I checked my coordinates. Still in the same place. I had dashcam footage running too, so I made a note to review it later. For the next 20 minutes, I drove up and down that stretch of highway, looking for any sign of the car. I even pulled into a gas station about 5 miles ahead and asked the clerk if they'd seen a silver sedan pass through recently. They hadn't seen any cars at all for the last hour. When I finally got back to the station, I pulled the footage from my dash cam. You can see everything clearly. The car pulling over, me walking up to the window, talking to the driver, then me returning to the cruiser, radioing in. But when dispatch says the car was totaled, the footage flickers for a second, like interference. And after that, the car is just gone. My headlights are shining on empty road. I had a tech guy review it, but he couldn't explain the cut. No evidence of tampering, no glitch in the timestamp. The camera just stopped showing the vehicle. I tried to find the crash report later, the one from 3 years earlier. The file existed. The driver's name matched the license I saw that night. The photo attached to the report showed the same man I'd spoken to. They said he passed instantly. I never filed an official report about what I saw. I just said the stop ended with no contact. Maybe I didn't want to be the guy in the office talking about ghosts or seeing things. I hadn't been back to McDowell County in over 30 years. After the mine shut down and my brother died in the collapse, I swore I'd never step foot near those hills again. But when my mother passed last winter and the old family home became mine, I didn't have much of a choice. Selling it meant returning to where everything started and ended. The drive through the Appalachian backroads felt like going backward in time. The small towns were mostly gone now. Boarded up shops, rusted trucks left in tall grass, old church signs with missing letters. The air smelled the same though. Coal dust and pine, damp earth, that cold metallic edge that never left your tongue. The house was exactly how I remembered. Sagging porch, flaking white paint, and the mountains looming right behind it. I spent the first few days cleaning, fixing pipes, sorting through old things. Mom had kept every newspaper clipping about the mine accident, like she couldn't stop herself from reliving it. I found one with my brother's name printed in bold. Local miner among 5 killed in shaft collapse. I read it twice, even though I didn't need to. I was there that day. I spend some days reliving old memories and moving stuff. However, by the 3rd night, I was unable to fall asleep. So around midnight, I decided to drive out to the old site, maybe for closure, maybe out of guilt. The road was barely passable, cracked asphalt giving way to dirt. Trees had swallowed most of it. When I finally reached the clearing, I almost didn't recognize it. The company had welded steel plates across the mine entrance years ago, and vines had started crawling up the metal. A few old warning signs lay half buried in mud. I stood there for a while, just listening and thinking. It was quiet, peaceful even. No birds, no wind. Then, from deep inside the sealed shaft, I heard something I can't explain. Someone was whistling. As it kept on, I realized I knew the tune. It was an old song my brother and I used to whistle as kids, something our father taught us when we helped him in the garden. A simple little melody, nothing special, but hearing it there, echoing out of the mine where he died, made my knees weak. At first, I tried to convince myself it had to be the wind. Maybe the metal plates were shifting and creating some kind of sound, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. The notes were too deliberate and too human. I called out his name before I realized what I was doing. "Danny?" The whistling stopped immediately. I waited. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The silence stretched until I thought I might have imagined it. Then, faintly, from behind the steel, came the sound of someone breathing. Slow, ragged breaths. I stumbled back a few steps. There was no way anyone could be inside. The entrance had been sealed for decades. Still, I found myself stepping closer again, pressing my ear against the cold metal. For a moment, all I could hear was that shallow breathing. Then something hit the other side of the steel, hard. It sounded like a hand. Then another. Then a muffled voice, close enough that I could make out the words. "It ain't right you left me here." I ran. I don't remember getting back to my car or starting the engine. The drive down that dirt road felt endless. When I finally reached the main road, I pulled over and sat there with the headlights off, trying to find a logical explanation to it, but I couldn't. It had to have been him, or some evil spirit or entity pretending to be him. When I got back to my mother's house, I sat by the window, staring at the tree line behind the house. Every few minutes I thought I saw something move in the dark, shadows between the trees. I was still up at around 3 a.m., and then the sound started again. Whistling. It was faint, carried on the wind, but it was the same tune. My brother's tune. I turned off every light in the house and just listened. It moved around the yard from one side to the other. It kept like that for hours until it finally faded away. I sat there until the first light of dawn finally broke through the mist. When morning came, I decided I was done. I packed what little I'd brought, locked the house, and threw my bag in the truck. But as I pulled out of the driveway, I noticed something that made me stop. There were boot prints in the dirt, starting at the tree line, crossing the yard, and stopping right at the porch steps. I didn't get out to look. I just wanted to get out of there and never return. I sold it to a developer a month later. He told me he planned to tear it down and clear the land for cabins. I didn't tell him about the mine or what I heard that night, but part of me wonders if I should have. Part of me wants to go back. Because what if it really is my brother's spirit and he is trapped there somehow? It started as a dumb idea for our YouTube channel. We called ourselves the Haunt Crew, even though none of us had ever actually experienced anything remotely paranormal. We just filmed in abandoned buildings, played up jump scares, edited static over things, and pretended to see ghosts. It was all fake, until Cutler High. Our school had one of those basements built back in the 1950s. Low ceilings, concrete floors, and a maze of pipes that groaned every time the heat kicked on. It wasn't even supposed to be accessible to students, but everybody knew the janitor kept a spare key behind a vent near the gym. There were stories, of course. Kids hearing voices during detention, a janitor who died down there decades ago, doors that slammed on their own. Every school has stories like that. So one Friday night after basketball practice, we decided to finally film Ghost Hunt Cutler High Basement. Just me, Tyler, and Mia. We waited until the custodian's truck pulled out of the parking lot before sneaking in through the side door. Tyler had the camera, an old Sony handheld he bought from a pawn shop, and Mia had a cheap EMF detector we'd ordered online. I carried the flashlight. The basement door was heavy and loud. "Perfect atmosphere," Tyler whispered. recording over my shoulder. We walked down the stairs, joking to fill the silence. The light barely reached the end of the hallway. There were rooms on both sides, storage, maintenance, maybe old classrooms that had been converted years ago. The deeper we went, the more I felt like the space was shrinking. Nothing happened at first. We filmed for maybe 15 minutes. Jumps, laughter, me pretending to see shadows, Tyler whispering fake EVP questions into the dark. Standard stuff. All of a sudden, Mia stopped what she was doing and whispered, "Did you guys hear that?" It was low, really low, but there was definitely a sound. A slow, dragging scrape, like something being pulled across the concrete floor. It came from the far end of the hall. We went quiet. Tyler kept filming, zooming down the hallway, but there was nothing. After a moment, we laughed it off and blamed it on the old pipes, finished our outro, and left. We didn't think much about it. That night, I dropped them off and went home. Later, Tyler texted me, "Bro, watch this part at 10:48. I figured he'd added a dumb edit or something, so I clicked the link he sent. The footage was raw, no filters yet. It showed me shining the flashlight down the hallway, same moment as before. But when the camera panned left, something moved. It was quick, like a head leaning out from behind the corner at the far end. Pale white, bald, eyes wide open. Just long enough for the lens to catch it before it pulled back out of sight. None of us had seen it in person. I replayed the clip over and over. It wasn't a trick of the light. The face looked real. The skin was almost colorless. I called Tyler immediately. He was already freaking out. "Man, that wasn't us. That wasn't anyone down there." Mia didn't believe it at first. We sent her the clip, and after 10 minutes she texted, "We have to go back." It was the worst idea we could have had, but by then curiosity had replaced fear. We needed more proof. We met the next night around 10 p.m. This time we brought 2 flashlights, new batteries, and Tyler's tripod so we could leave the camera running. The plan was to film the hallway again, just to see if we caught anything. It looked the same, quiet and empty. We set the camera on the tripod facing the corner where the thing had appeared. I stood in front of it while Tyler adjusted focus. "All right," I said, forcing a laugh. "Let's invite our ghost friend out again." We waited. All we could hear was just the low hum of the building's pipes. A second later, one of the doors down the hall creaked open. Tyler whipped the camera around. The door stopped halfway open. There was no breeze, no draft, but it slowly began to shut again. We stood there with our hearts pounding. Mia whispered, "It's like it's watching us." Tyler aimed the camera at the door and zoomed in. "If there's anyone here, show yourself." But nothing else happened while we were there. So we packed up fast and left. When we got back to Tyler's place, we plugged the camera into his laptop. It was the same scene we remembered. Us standing, waiting. But halfway through, while the door was closing, the camera's autofocus shifted suddenly, to the right. For a split second, something was crouched behind us. It wasn't a shadow. It was the same face from the night before, but closer, right behind me. Its eyes were black pits, its mouth was open wide. The thing just stared at the camera, motionless, until the image cut to static. Tyler slammed the laptop shut and nearly dropped it. None of us spoke for a long time. We deleted everything, every file. We even broke the SD card in half. A few days later, Tyler texted me again. "Someone knocked on my window last night. When he looked outside, no one was there. But on the glass, there was a handprint." That was 2 weeks ago. Tyler hasn't been back to school since. Last night, I opened my YouTube app. We hadn't uploaded anything in months, and yet, there was a new video on our channel. No title, no thumbnail. Just a 5-second clip. It showed our old basement footage, paused on that frame with the pale face. A couple summers ago, me and 3 friends from college decided to take a weekend trip up into the northern Rockies. Just an excuse to get out of town, have some beers, and pretend we still knew how to handle the outdoors. It had been a long year of work and routines, and we all needed the break. It was me, Aaron, and my best friend since high school, Ben, who never takes anything seriously, and Tyler, who's basically a walking REI catalog. He was the one who picked the spot, a clearing near a creek between 2 ridgelines. When we got there, the air smelled clean, pine needles covered the ground, and the only sounds were the creek and the wind through the trees. Honestly, it was perfect. We set up camp, built a fire ring, and sat around talking about how different life felt after graduation. By the time the sun went down, we were a few beers in and starting to get that cozy, lazy camping vibe. Around 10, the fire was dying down, and Tyler said he was going to grab more wood before it got too dark. He grabbed a flashlight and headed down one of the trails that disappeared into the trees. 15 minutes passed, then 30. At first, we didn't think much of it. Tyler liked to explore, but when it hit an hour, Ben started cracking jokes about him getting lost. Aaron called out a few times, but there was no answer. We agreed it was too risky to go wandering around drunk in the dark, so we waited by the fire. The plan was to look for him in the morning if he didn't come back. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not just that he was gone, but that the forest around us felt off. It was close to midnight when Aaron suddenly said, "There he is." Across the clearing between 2 trees, we saw a light. Tyler's flashlight. He stepped into view at the edge of the firelight. I remember this wave of relief until I noticed how he was walking. His movements were stiff and weird, and he was staring right at us without saying anything. "Dude, where the hell were you?" Ben laughed nervously. "You were gone forever." Tyler didn't say anything. He just stood there about 15 feet away, clothes damp, eyes wide, not blinking. Aaron asked if he was okay. He still didn't say anything. Then, from the trees behind him, we heard a voice. "Hey, you guys still up?" It was Tyler's voice. For a few seconds, none of us moved. The person we thought was Tyler tilted its head just slightly. My stomach dropped. Aaron whispered, "What the hell is that?" The second Tyler called again, the thing near the fire took a slow step forward. Ben jumped up and shouted, "What the hell are you?" It didn't answer. It just stared at him with no emotion. Then it began walking silently back into the dark. A moment later, the real Tyler came stumbling out of the trees from the opposite direction, out of breath, carrying an armful of branches. When he saw our faces, he froze. "Why are you guys yelling?" he asked. We all started talking at once. He told us he'd been on the phone with his girlfriend down near the creek. Said he'd heard us laughing and talking the whole time. But when we told him what we saw, someone who looked exactly like him walking out of the woods, he went pale. "I heard that," he said quietly. "Someone calling my name. I thought it was you guys." We kept the fire going and sat with our backs to it, flashlights aimed at the trees. Around 2 in the morning, we heard slow footsteps circling us, branches breaking, leaves rustling. It never came closer, but it didn't go away either. By sunrise, we had the tent packed and the fire out. No one said a word on the drive back. Tyler stared out the window the entire way, eyes red from the lack of sleep. A few days later, Aaron sent me a photo from that night. It was one he'd taken before everything happened. It was of our campsite. The fire was burning low, all 4 of us in the frame. And just behind Tyler, barely visible in the shadows, was another figure, Same height, same clothes. I didn't believe in skinwalkers before, but I do now. I used to work at a rundown roadside motel just outside El Paso. It wasn't part of a chain, just a weather-beaten place, 30 rooms, one vending machine, and a manager who only came around to collect the week's earnings. I was 24 at the time. It wasn't the worst job. Mostly quiet. The guests would often be the occasional late-night trucker or tired family. I'd bring a book or scroll my phone through most of the shift, sipping lukewarm coffee and waiting for 7 a.m. to roll around. This happened last spring. I remember because it was right after that stretch of bad rain we had. The kind that floods desert roads and leaves everything smelling like wet sand and metal. The storm had knocked out our security cameras the week before, and the manager still hadn't fixed them. Not that we ever really needed them. At least that's what I thought. It was a Thursday night, a little past 1 a.m. when the guy came in. I hadn't heard a car pull up, but I saw him through the glass door, just standing there in the rain, no umbrella, wearing a dark hoodie soaked through. I buzzed him in, assuming his car was parked around the side. He stepped inside, dripping onto the floor. "Need a room?" I asked. He didn't answer at first, just looked at me. His face was pale and kind of weird, like he was trying to hold in a smirk. His eyes didn't quite focus. Then he finally said, "Yeah, just one night. Cash only. No ID." That wasn't unusual for this place, but something about him didn't sit right. I gave him room 6, one of the closer ones, so I could keep an eye on it. He took the key without a word and walked out. I watched him cross the lot, but I never saw where he came from. Still no car. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was just high. I went back to my book. About 40 minutes later, the phone at the desk rang. I picked it up. No one spoke. I said hello 3 times before finally hanging up. Before I could even sit back down, it rang again. This time, there was breathing, like someone had been running. "Front desk," I said, more annoyed than anything. Nothing. Then, just before the line clicked off, I heard a voice say, "She's not breathing." It sent a chill straight through me. I called room 6, thinking maybe he misdialed. No answer. I hung up and stared out the window for a minute. The lot was still. Room 6's curtain was drawn. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe it was a prank. Then I noticed something on the monitor. One of the motion sensors in the hallway near the laundry room had just pinged. We didn't have guests in those rooms that night, and I hadn't seen anyone go in or out. I walked over, trying to act tough with my flashlight in hand. I passed rooms 7 and 8, which were empty and dark. When I got to the laundry door, I heard something inside. Shuffling. "Hello?" I called. "This area is staff only." No response. I opened the door slowly. It was empty, machines off, no lights. But the weirdest part was the smell. Something foul, like old meat. I shut the door, went back to the office, and locked it behind me. A little after 3 a.m., another guest, a woman from room 12, came into the lobby. She looked shaken, said she'd seen someone walking outside her window, not just walking, but standing and watching. She thought it was someone trying to break in, so she turned on the lights and the person walked off into the dark. I asked her what the person looked like. She just said, "He was wet, like dripping, even though it's not raining anymore." Room 6's curtain was still drawn. I decided to knock on the door, maybe ask if the guy needed anything. But when I got there, the room was dark. I knocked twice. No answer. I used the master key. The room was empty. Bed untouched, lights off, shower dry. No sign anyone had ever been there. I walked out into the lot confused and turned back toward the office, and that's when I saw it. Wet footprints on the concrete, bare feet, leading away from room 6 toward the back fence where the brush got thick. And right next to the door frame, scratched into the paint, were 4 words. "She is not breathing." I followed protocol, called the cops. They showed up, swept the place, took a statement. Nothing came of it. The guy never checked in with a name, he had no car, no prints in the system. So much for only cash and no ID. Room 6 hadn't been used in over a year, they told me later. Management had closed it after a domestic incident. A man had brought a woman there. She was found dead in the bathtub the next day. He disappeared before they could arrest him. They reopened the room 2 weeks before I started. I don't work there anymore, but I often think about it. Maybe the man I saw was the same man that got away.